Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a little book haul. All the books that I've acquired since my last haul about a month or two ago. I add books quite regularly onto my shelves, but I also get rid of a lot. So I'm kind of shuffling in and shuffling out books all the time. I don't really film unhauls. I don't know. I just read a book, and if I don't like it, I'll put it in a little free library, because that is primarily where a lot of these come from. Little free libraries, really cheap from the library bookstore for like 10 cents or 50 cents, and Goodwill for very cheap as well. If I need a new book and I'm looking for one, I'll usually look at Powell's if they have it, then Barnes & Noble, then Amazon. It's kind of my going down the list. So a few I did purchase for a specific reason, but besides that, let's get into the books. As usual, I categorize them into genres. So let's start with nonfiction. The biggest chunk of nonfiction I have here is memoirs. The first one is All Things Bright and Beautiful by James Herriot. I read All Creatures Great and Small in April and really enjoyed it, actually. This is the second book in the series. I actually plan on reading this in June for Buzzworthon for All in the Title and continuing the series. And I found this in a little free library like 2 days ago, and I was like, well, feels very serendipitous. It's old and beat up and, you know, not in great condition at all, but I don't really care about things like that. I then found An Invisible Thread by Laura Schroff and Alex Tresniowski. I've seen Krista from Books and Jams talk about how great this book was, one that she really enjoyed. This is a story of an 11-year-old panhandler, a busy sales executive, and an unlikely meeting with destiny. A friendship between a wealthy New Yorker and a poor panhandling boy. And they tell their story. I feel like that's gonna be great. I found at Goodwill in absolute perfect condition, The Sound of Gravel by Ruth Werner. This book is on my list of nonfiction books to get to this year. I've heard it's very similar to Educated, about a woman growing up in a Mormon cult. This is a 5-star prediction for me. I just think I'm gonna love it. I also found 2 Russian memoirs that I've recently talked about. Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking, I actually read 2 months ago and loved it, and so happy that I found this copy at Goodwill. This was a fantastic memoir about growing up in Soviet Russia, particularly with stories around food. And The Tsar of Love and Techno by Anthony Mara, recently talked about as a book that got on my radar, and this is a collection of short stories. I know Olive from Book Olive loved this book, and so happy to have found this one in excellent condition. Hopefully we'll be getting to that one at some point. The next one I have is An Ocelot in an Underwear Drawer, Adventures of a Profoundly Imperfect and Intensely Happy Man by Christopher Scott Ford. So I recently reconnected with my childhood best friend, and this is actually her father's memoirs, also a collection of short stories about his life. And I grew up around this family, and I'm so excited to read his book, and this will be like a fun personal connection. I have 2 history books here. The first one is Dead Wake, The Last Crossing of the Lusitania by Eric Larson, my second Eric Larson that I now own. He's one of the authors that I need to read this year. It's gonna happen. Is it gonna be this one? Is it gonna be Splendid in the Vial? I don't know, but one of these will get read by the end of the year, hopefully. The other one I found is Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shetterly. I've watched the movie. I really enjoyed the movie. I heard the book is a little bit drier, but I feel like it still will hopefully be interesting. This book is about the Black women that worked for NASA. I then received this beautiful book from my sister Olga, who's like an interior designer, creative, like her home is next level. And she sent me this book as a little surprise. It's called Biblio Style, How We Live at Home with Books by Nina Freudenberger. And this is a coffee table book full of photos of people's libraries and bookshelves. It also features various bookshops around the world as well. It is very inspirational, one of those that you could just flip through at any moment. It actually inspired me to like redesign these shelves. I mean, they're not that much different because I just have too many books, and I still like to coordinate them by color, but it was kind of fun to place them in different areas and think about how they look. So thank you, Olga, for this lovely gift. And finally, for nonfiction, a book that I purchased for a purpose, and that is Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. Krista from Books and Jams is having a Christian nonfiction readathon, and every Sunday in June we are talking about this book. This book is just over 200 pages. The chapters are very short. It's really easy to read through, and at least for me, whenever I read Christian nonfiction with others, I get so much more out of the book. This author's kind of mission is for the reader to understand who Jesus was as a person and understand his heart, versus just getting at the actions. You know, we know what Jesus did. He died on the cross, and this is very much rooted in scripture as well as Puritan writings. It's definitely an interesting one, and I'm enjoying it, and it's not too late to join if you wanted to. So nonfiction's out of the way. Historical fiction is my next largest category, but let me take a break in between with miscellaneous, because I just have a few books in random categories. The first is just plain contemporary. I mentioned in May that I read Morley and Moriarty, and I loved, and I found 2 more of her books in little free libraries. The Hypnotist Love Story and 9 Perfect Strangers. I've not really heard great things about this, but I feel like I still kind of want to try it, and I haven't really heard anything about this one either, but I'm clearly enjoying her books. The next book I found at Goodwill is The Honey Thief by Elizabeth Graver. I picked this one up because honey is in the title, and you know me, books about bees and honey, I want to make whole videos about them, so I picked this one up for that project. But this also sounded a little bit interesting. It is about an 11-year-old girl who's caught shoplifting, and her mother decides that they're going to move to upstate New York. So this is a story about like family tension, mother-daughter relationship. I don't know if I love those stories yet because I haven't read too many of them, but I'm willing to pick up something a little bit more out of my comfort zone for a bee honey video. Speaking of bees and honey, I could not pass this one up, and it is The Hive by Greg Olson. This is a very cool cover. Also picked it up for that same project. But this is a mystery thriller set in the Pacific Northwest about a detective who's investigating the murder of a young journalist found at the bottom of a ravine. And I believe this has like some cultish elements. I then found Who is Maud Dixon by Alexandra Andrews. I haven't seen too many people talk about this, but the people who have really sang its praises. Audrey from Chapters and Converse said this book is great for getting out of reading slumps. So from my understanding, this is about a woman that works for an author that is writing under a pen name, and no one really knows who this author is. These two women go on a trip, the author ends up dying, and the lady working for her decides, well, no one really knows who the author is anyway, so I'm just going to take her place and continue writing her books. Something along those lines, perhaps. This next one, I don't know if it's going to be for me, but I really want to give it a try, and that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I didn't realize that this book was written in the 1980s. I just know that people who love Studio Ghibli movies, which I don't even know what that is, I've never seen that. They're like these like artsy anime wholesome movies slash books, question mark, I don't really know. But a lot of people really love this book, and this is a middle grade, I believe, children's fantasy, not usually my jam, but again, no harm done because this was in a little free library, so I'm willing to try because it's like well known and loved, maybe one of those like cult classic kind of books. We'll see how it goes. And then I have two classics. The first one I found is A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. Don't know too many details except that it is set in Florence, Italy, which is one of my favorite places. I traveled there with my sister in 2018 and it was so much fun and such a beautiful city. So I am just so down for a book that gives off all of those like Florentine Italian vibes. And then I finally purchased this beast of a boy, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. There is a readathon happening this summer. I've already tabbed the 5 sections. I'm a little bit sad that there aren't prettier editions of this book out there. There are, but they're not the translations that I want or that are abridged, and I don't want to read the abridged version. This is the unabridged version, and I've heard that Robin Buss, who is this translator, is the best translator. So I went for the Black Penguin Classic. There is the cloth bound ones, but guys, I'm probably in the minority. I think they're beautiful, but they're not really fun to read. I've held and opened a few at Barnes & Noble and they're just really not comfortable. And so with a book that I'm gonna spend this much time in, I want it to at least be like comfy and kind of floppy, you know. But I finally got it and I'm finally gonna do it. This book has been on my TBR for way too long. I am very excited to get to this one this summer. One little chunk of books left to show you, and that is historical fiction, which I haven't been reading too much of, but I still love it with all my heart. So the first is these 3 books that I got for like 10 cents each at my library, and I mentioned these in my video of books that have recently gone on my radar that I didn't really know anything about before, and that is the Earth's Children series, specifically the first 3 books, starting with The Clan of the Cave Bear. This first book was written in 1980, but this is a historical fiction series set in like the cavemen Ice Age times. I'm missing the word. There's a word that describes that period, but whatever. Since mentioning this book in that video, so many of you said that it is a fantastic series and that you loved it when you read it younger, or that you've been wanting to get to it. And it's a bit of a cult classic. I think people either love it or hate it. But with all the hype that you guys gave, I'm very much intrigued to start the series and see how it works for me. So I own the first 3 books because I didn't really need the first 3, but they all kind of came together in the same set and they were 10 cents each. So I was like, I'll take them. Speaking of another long series, I have Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone by Diana Gabaldon. This is book 9 in the Outlander series. I have read books 1 through 5, so I still need to read 6, 7, 8, and then 9, and I believe there's going to be 1 book left, number 10. Who knows when that's going to come out. I tend to actually really not like reading or starting series that aren't finished. I'm a bit of a binger, both with books and TV. Like, I want to completely, you know, close the chapter after I'm done watching or reading and not really think about it. I don't like waiting years for books after I've forgotten all the details. All that aside, I was gifted this by my lovely friend Maria, who works at the library, who's also a fan of Outlander like me, and she gave me this copy of this book, and I'm so excited to own it for my shelves. Maybe I'll get to it this year. Probably not, because these books are hefty, very long, and I have many other plans of books to read, but I do want to slowly make my way still through the series. Maybe I'll start book 6 in the fall and just continue on. This next one I'm not sure about, and that is When We Left Cuba by Chanel Clayton. The first book is Next Year in Havana, and I know that that book was popular several years ago. I don't think that this is a chronological series, but there's like now 4 or 5 books that are all in the same world, and I think certain characters, maybe family members, are in each of these books, so they're kind of connected, but you can read them out of order. I'm not really sure, and I also don't really know if I want to get into this series. This is kind of like a book in purgatory for me. Like, if people are like, go for it, you should read it, they're great, I might try it. But then if people are also like, they're fine, nothing special, I also could maybe give this away, because for some reason I've never been drawn to any of the books in the series by this author, and I'm not sure if it's because of the cover or what, because historical fiction set in time periods and places that I'm not usually reading sound really interesting to me. Cuba during the Cold War sounds fantastic, but for some reason this is not the book that I want to read about Cuba during the Cold War. I don't know why. That might just be a me thing. So if you've read these or read any book in this series, let me know what your thoughts were. Like, are they worth getting into? Next up is The Home for Unwanted Girls by Joanna Goodman. All I know is that this is set in 1950s Quebec, Canada, and about a young girl in the orphanage system. This one's a bit of a rogue one that I haven't seen anyone talk about or anywhere, but just found it at Goodwill, and I was like, well, I'll read the back, and it sounds intriguing. The Secret of Magic by Deborah Johnson. The line that caught me is, this is a novel that brings authentic history to light. A young female attorney from New York City attempts the impossible in 1946, attaining justice for a black man in the Deep South. I haven't read a book about like a lawyer in a while, and I feel like I really like lawyer trial kind of books. Sounds kind of intriguing. We'll see. I then found Her Heart for a Compass by Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. Now, this book intrigued me because earlier this year I read A Well-Behaved Woman, which is about a woman in high society, elite New York. And this book is a coming-of-age story about a young woman in Victorian England that deals with both high society and low. And she's like a friend of Queen Victoria's and has to marry someone maybe that she doesn't want to marry. The author is a former member of the British royal family. And then the very last book is a historical fiction middle grade, and that is The Night Divided by Jennifer A. Nielsen. It's about a young girl and her family that live in Berlin, and then overnight the Berlin Wall goes up, and on one side it's her and her mother, and on the other side it's her father and brother. So their family is divided. Will the family be brought back together again? How will they survive during this time? That's kind of the questions and the gist of the story. But I do really want to read some more World War II stories set in Berlin, because I have visited Berlin and loved that city so much, and I always feel a sense of connection from a place that I visited, so I'm excited to try that one when I get to it. So that is it, my friends. Those are all the books that I've added to my collection in the last month or two. We'll be squeezing them in somewhere on these shelves. But yeah, let me know as always if you've read any of them, what your thoughts are, ones that you want to hype up or ones that were maybe duds. I love hearing your guys' thoughts. They truly do change the trajectory of my reading, of whether I'm gonna pick up a book sooner rather than later or that kind of thing, because I love getting recommendations from friends. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for watching today. I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye.